On this episode of Retro Car Guy 530, I'm going to check out the OBDResource BM520 battery analyzer. It lets you check out the state of health for your battery in your vehicle and its charging system. I was provided this device free of charge for review purposes, but I'm allowed to say anything I find good or bad about it, and I'm going to check it out on my vehicle out in the garage right after the intro. So, let's get into it. This video is broken into a variety of chapters. If there's one of particular interest to you, look at the time index and jump to that section, or expand the description section of this video and use the link in that section. Now, let's get into the video. Today I'm going to be using the OBDResource BM520 battery tester and electrical system tester on my 2014 Chevrolet Caprice PPV. It's a vehicle produced by the former Holden division of GM in Australia. It shares lineage with the Chevy SS sedan, Pontiac G8, and various other Holden produced vehicles. But the battery is located in the trunk. That's why we're residing in the trunk at the moment with the cameras. We're going to go ahead and connect the BM520 and do a quick battery check here. And we're going to see that the BM520 can be connected without regard to polarity, although it is usually recommended to connect it correctly. But it does have polarity protection. So let's go ahead and get the red connected to the positive here. And it said clips OK when it was booting up there. And we can see the screen of the BM520. And I've got the buttons hopefully in view enough there for you to see on that particular camera. So we're going to go into the check function of the BM520. Clicking on OK. It is a 12 volt system. OK. And we're going to do the quick test. Click on OK. And you can see that it's asking for the rated amp hour rating of the battery. And this particular battery is an interstate battery, H794R. The label does not actually display the cold cranking amps, but it does display the amp hours as 80. So I've already preset that to 80. If you want to change it, you would use the up and down buttons here to change it to the appropriate value, and then you press OK. And it's done its quick check of that, and it has found the state of health, SOH, is at 100%. The resistance internal to the various plates and connectivity through the batteries at 3.25 milliohms, it looks like, ohms, yes. And the GB rating is 790 amps, the standard rating 640 amps, and the current voltage is at 12.60 amps, so it's fully charged. This car's been sitting here for several days, not on a battery maintainer, so that's pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and click the back arrow here to back out of the particular function. I apologize for the random noises. I have way too much going on as far as outside noises to control for this, unfortunately. So if we're in the vehicle, we're going to do a battery test. And it is an AGM flat plate. And we're going to use that, let's say 780 cold cranking amps. These are the various standards throughout the world, so depending on what your battery is rated, make sure you use the appropriate rating for your battery to enter the value. The most common is cold cranking amps, the CCA, but there are a variety of them here. And check the documentation or online for the appropriate definitions of those. It'd be nice if there was some additional definition of at least the names of these here rather than the acronyms. But CCA is cold cranking amps, which is the most common. And we're going to go into that one. And I'm going to bring it down to 780. And tell it to go ahead and do the test. And it has done the check here again using the cold cranking amp rating. And again, the state of health is 100% good. It has determined the cold cranking amps at 800 and the voltage again at 12.6. And the standard I was testing against was 780 cold cranking amps. So We have found this to be in good shape. We can also do a charging ripple test, which we'll do in a moment. We can do a startup test, so where it will you start the engine and it will track the load against the vehicle. And then if the battery is out of the vehicle, you can do the same type of test with it not being in the vehicle at all. One thing I'm going to show here is the reversal of the clamps on the battery itself. So let's disconnect the negative. And I'm going to reverse that. Let's actually put the ground on the positive. And watch the screen. It will quickly display clips reversed and then boot up. This time it was so quick you couldn't even see it, at least I couldn't see it. But it actually will work with the clips on the incorrect posts, but it is recommended that you have the red on the positive and the black on the negative or ground. Next thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to go to the front of the vehicle and check out the same battery test through the jump start post to see if they're any different. I'm going to connect the battery tester here to the front jump start post in the engine bay of this vehicle. And we have the positive up here, so I'll route that over here. And the negative jump start post is here. And we're starting the BM520 and we'll go into the check. I want to see if the same test rating comes back. 12-volt battery. We're going to do that quick test again. 80 amp hours, which is the rating for the battery. So as you can see here, this is not an appropriate place to be doing the test. It's claiming the battery state of charge is only 21%. So it's not, even though you're maybe tempted to do the test up at the jump start post, it's not the right location. In summary, on the under check we have the voltage selection, a quick test based on amp hours, and in-vehicle test based on a variety of other testing standards. So if we do a battery test, charging test, startup load test, and a load test, some of those do require revving the engine, which may require a second person. And then we have the waveform, which we're capturing a waveform now of the voltage. Hopefully that's being captured nicely on the camera at this point. And then you can go to playback, and we should be able to do a waveform playback, which is the one we just observed. Here's the last record of the last test, showing you the cold cranking amps that was detected and the voltage and state of health and state of charge, and the result was good. And you can delete the record as well. And then we have the setup languages, the self-test, the beep configuration, the firmware information, and then the themes. And then lastly here we have the multimeter mode, which is doing a quick check based on its determination of the current voltage it's observing in the system and the state of the health of the system. Gives you an approximation of what's okay and what's not. So that's the quick overview of the OBDResource BM520 battery tester. We're back in the trunk location connected directly to the battery, and this vehicle does have remote start capability, so I'm going to do the start function here. So we're going to do check, 12 volt, in vehicle, startup test. So now I'm going to use the remote start to start the vehicle. It's detected that the engine is running. It's testing. total time is 3,706 milliseconds, so like 3.7 seconds. Starting ability normal, and the voltage during the start was 11.29 volts, so that was good. Let's turn that off. So let's attempt the same thing here, but with the start the engine, all right. And we're gonna have to, I can't do both here, remote. All right, this is where you're gonna need to start the engine, keep the engine at 25 to 3,500 RPMs, and then press the OK button, given the location of the battery, and I won't be able to do that since I'll have to be in two physical different locations. This is more like a two-person particular operation. But that is the charging system test. I'm going to see if I can replicate the correct behavior for that. And same thing. This full load is when the AC is on, the lights are on, and you have the RPMs up to the particular RPM range, the stated 2,000 to 2,500, to make sure the alternator is charging and to make sure that it can maintain an appropriate charge level at that particular RPM. So we're going to look at the waveform. So we're going to do OK. And we're already at start level here, so let me go ahead and terminate the run. And we should see the voltage level decay because the alternator is not running. And you can see that the minimum voltage is displayed on the lower left there, the current voltage in the middle, and the max that was observed was on the lower right. So you can observe a startup voltage here if you want with the graphing capabilities, and these are saved for later playback. Now I've already hit my 2 remote starts, so I'm going to have to go in and turn on the ignition and turn it back off to allow me to do another one here. Should see the voltage go down a little bit, the headlights just came on. So that was the start with the key, and you can see that the voltage level is increasing due to the alternator kicking in here, so the current now this is under computer control, so the charging strategy for the system is based on the engine control module determining the current charge voltage. And right now it's actually stating that it doesn't need to be charged, which for certain systems such as this one, that's okay. You can see that the minimum that was detected during the actual start of the engine was 10.18 volts, which is well within the good range. All right, let's go ahead and exit here. Now we should be able to go to playback. And let's look at that waveform playback. And we have a couple of them here, so they're named based on the sequence I believe that they were. It's okay to replay. So the waveform that we just captured just a moment ago is stored on the unit, and you can play that back at a later point to help you diagnose your system if you're having a particular problem. And then the other one before that. And then you can clear the records to get rid of them. I'm going to begin the upgrade demonstration here by showing you the current version of the firmware on the device. We're going to navigate down to the setup menu option here and click on OK. And then under Info, click on OK. And we see a particular serial number, which I'll be blurring out. And then the hardware version is 1.0 and software version is 1.0 with the release date of January 4th, 2021. So with that information, we now have the version information from before the firmware upgrade. I'm actually going to take a screenshot of that, which I will extract from the device once we get it connected to the computer as a separate screenshot to be saved off. There's the screenshot, which is _06. All right, with that, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this from the battery that I have here so that the unit will power down. I'm now going to connect this to a Windows laptop, which will mount as a USB drive E. I have a mini USB cable. With this, you'll see that the plugging in of the mini USB cable, it has the upgrading screen, which is part of the process of basically it's mounting the internal file system of the BM520 as a USB drive on your computer. With that, you're going to be refreshing the file system with the contents that you download from OBDResource to upgrade the firmware. So in this particular case, I have USB drive E. And we can see the various things there. Now that screenshot, that snapshot I took, I'm going to navigate here and I'm going to copy and move that over to my pictures here. I'm going to paste that over there just to save that off. Now at the root of drive E's, where we need, or basically we need to be able to access this. The first step here is if anything on here is something that you wish to save, like you want to retain the earlier version, including any waveform files, which would be in the wave directory. Make sure you copy those off before upgrading the firmware, because the steps to do this basically is you're going to be formatting the USB drive, wiping it clean, and then copying the contents of the firmware directory over to the USB mounted drive. So in this particular case, I've already copied off all items that I wish to retain. I'm now going to click on Format for that particular drive. And I'm going to leave it with the defaults there and click Start. Okay, the format is complete. Close. Let's bring up the File Explorer again. And we can see the drive E is empty. I've obtained a file from OBDResource that contains version 2.0 of the firmware. I'm going to navigate into that particular directory. Basically, it's the entire file system contents for the BM520. So you need to select all items here. With all items selected in that particular directory, you're going to right-click and say Copy. Then you're going to navigate back to the USB mounted drive that you just formatted. And then click on that and click on Paste. This will take some amount of time to complete because of the transfer speed to the file system on the BM520. So I'll go ahead and speed through this process, and when this is completed, we'll pick back up the dialog. The files have been copied successfully over to the USB mounted drive on the BM520. So now we should be able to disconnect the BM520 from the computer. Anytime a USB file system is updated, you should try to do a graceful disconnect from the device. And by unmounting the device from the computer, in Windows you would right click on the drive and then click on Eject. When I perform that operation, it doesn't actually execute that it doesn't seem to dismount the drive, so I'm going to navigate away, right click on drive E, click on eject, and nothing seems to happen. So the BM520 doesn't seem to unmount itself when requested. So the best I can state at this point is to navigate away from it and then to disconnect it by removing the cable from it. And that should hopefully have written everything to the file system on the BM520. Now we're going to reconnect the power to a battery here to power up the BM520. It showed version 2.0 on the screen. It says information is loading. Okay, let's see what version we get. It already did display version 2. So let's press the down arrow here, go into setup, go into info. That's okay. The hardware version and software version are still 1.0. The release date has changed, and so that is different. So I'm going to go ahead and get a screenshot of that. So the release date has changed, and I know that this was prepared for me for demonstration purposes, so there may be no physical change in the particular firmware, but it does display the boot up screen where it does show version 2.0. So let's go ahead and exit this again. And usually with a firmware upgrade, you would want to go through and make sure all your settings and selections are as they need to be. And the beep, and the info, and then the theme. I had it on theme 2 and it's still on theme 2. So let's see that again. I'm going to disconnect power. This is the initial boot up after the firmware upgrade boot up. So we had the files copied, did the initial boot up, it showed version 2.0. Now we're going to do a regular boot up here. It shows V2.0 there on the screen, so there is an indication that this is version 2.0 based on the information I was given from OBDResource. So that is the process for upgrading the firmware on your BM520 battery tester. A new feature, it seems to be in version 2.0 of the firmware, is a feature I was told of by James at OBDResource. When you enter a menu multiple levels down, you can long press the back button to go to the top level menu. When I tried this with version 1.0 of the firmware, it did not do that. So let's start the device. We'll see the version 2.0 on the lower right. And let's say I'm going down to the battery check, and out of vehicle, regular flooded, CCA, and let's say, no, I want to go back to the top level menu. You can now long press the back button, and it goes back to the top level menu, making it a lot easier to navigate around. In version 1.0 of the firmware, that did not work. So that's a quick tip on making the navigation with the BM520 a lot easier. Upgrade to version 2.0 of the firmware when available. Here are my final thoughts on the OBDResource BM520 battery tester, battery analyzer. It's a good value at approximately $130 US, and sometimes you can find a coupon for an additional $10 off. It supports 6, 12, and 24 volt batteries and charging systems. It has this regardless of polarity technology. It lets you connect the cables in either order, positive, negative, negative, positive, and it will work. It provides a quick test, inputting the amp hour rating from the battery label. It gives you an overall quick estimate of the state of health of the battery and the various cold cranking amp value and GB value. And then the in-vehicle test is a more accurate test where you can do a battery test, charging test, startup test, and a load test. Supports regular flooded AGM, gel, and EFB batteries. It supports a variety of international standards for working with batteries, so you can test the battery in the standard you're familiar with, most typically cold cranking amps here in the United States. The BM520 provides an in-vehicle startup test to allow you to monitor the voltage while the vehicle is starting, and it walks you through the steps clearly and easily to give you a summary result at the end. One feature I really like on the BM520 is the waveform tracking of the battery voltage. You can watch it real time, and then you can see the min, current, and max values. with the timer on the top, and it saves the 10 most recent waveform files on the file system of the BM520, and you can play those back, and then when connected through the USB port, you can retrieve them and save them off on your computer. I only have a couple minor suggestions for the improvement of this device. When it comes to the various screens, such as the battery standards, international standards, it might be nice to display a little short description of each one if you're not totally fluent in all the standard acronyms. The second improvement I would like to see is in the load test and charging system tests that you must have a second person to help you to rev the engine before you press the OK button. It might be nice to have a timer where you press OK and you're given a certain number of seconds to get to the vehicle and start revving the engine. That way an individual can perform the test without the aid of a second person. Overall, the price point for this particular device being around $130 US is very inexpensive compared to some of the other ones. I have a Midtronics PBT 300, and that's well over $200, and this seems to have more functionality. So if you're a person that's interested in testing batteries, or you're a small shop, might want to check out the batteries in the customer vehicles that come in, you might want to check out the OBDResource BM520. If you found this video to be informative, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that bell notification to be notified when I upload new videos just like this to the channel. Look in the description section for any links, including affiliate links to purchase this product, or check out my other affiliate links or ways to support the channel down in the description section. Thanks for coming to the channel and checking out the video, and I'll see you in the next one.